This episode is sponsored by the IoT job site, the world's only dedicated space for applying for and advertising IoT vacancies across the world. Register now for job alerts or get in touch via let's talk at theiotjobsite.com.
Welcome to the IoT podcast show. As always, I'm your host, Tom White. Today, we are joined by Raullen Chai. Raullen is the CEO of IoTeX. IoTeX is a blockchain and IoT services business. Absolutely fantastic technology. Really looking forward to this. And thank you very much for coming onto the show, Raullen.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Really interested to kick off this episode, actually. As we mentioned backstage, it's rare that we've had people talking about blockchain and IoT and how that works. Most of our guests are talking about IoT devices, IoT security, how it works from sensor-driven environments. So really eager to get into this. So that our guests are aware, and just to introduce you, what is your background, Raullen, and how did you get into this world of blockchain and IoT?
Yeah, sure. Definitely. This is Raullen Chai. I'm CEO, co-founder of IoTeX Network. Yeah, a little bit, background about myself. I'm always curious about, how connected the world could be when I was a kid, right? So that's why I'm so indulged with computer science and hacker, stuff. When I even was just like a young teenager. And later I got my PhD, actually focused on lightweight cryptography from University of Waterloo in Canada. That's where Vitalik, the Ethereum co-founder, actually did his undergraduate study. In my research, at those years, basically I'm so focused on how to design security and privacy mechanism for embedded devices, meaning like the IoT stuffs, right? So which has very limited compute, memory, bandwidth, the battery, and so on. So actually, while my work, of course, with my advisor, we have like an authenticated encryption scheme. It's actually being standardized by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology in United States at the current moment. Yeah, so it's been a very fun journey. That's probably 10, 15 years back.
Wow.
Yeah, how time flies. After that, I joined Google. I came to Silicon Valley. I joined Google. Just leading a team over there, working lots of security and cloud-related projects for Google. So like one thing, my team built what's called Google Cloud Load Balancer, which still earns Google like 10, 20 millions US dollar per year. So it's a huge deal for Google. Yeah, that's where I learned how to make people connected with information, right? So that's also like around connection. Then later I joined Uber in 2016. As their head of cryptography, leading a team, building like the authentication schemes, some confidential computing systems. Basically, every time you use Uber, right? So you log in, that's my team and the system we built behind. So that's where I learned, how to connect people with their cars. I'm always thinking about how to connect everything actually in the world. So that's why, me and two other co-founders, we started the IoTeX back in 2017.
Raullen, what a background. I mean, how do I follow that, right? So ex-Uber, ex-Google, obviously, at a young age, interested in hacking and, and getting into computer systems. I think that's where it starts for a lot of people. Certainly for me, my background is in embedded systems and, I was there with... Yeah, so I was there with, PCM, CIA, Wi-Fi adapters and Pringle cans on the end of it and, trying to find networks and, using packet sniffers and what have you. So, I think everyone starts at an early age doing that. That's fantastic. Incredible background. And what led you to starting the business where you're at the moment? Because the business is quite large, right? You're based out of Silicon Valley. You've got a number of employees. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Let me start with the problem we are trying to solve, right? So as I think you are like an IoT guy, and there are like lots of audience who's also have a very strong IoT background. As far as everybody can see, actually, the current problem with the IoT is, so perhaps in 2040 and maybe 30, there will be 100 billion devices in the world, but actually, at least for now, right, 98% devices and data are actually controlled by this 2% centralized entity. they definitely like dominate everything. So this leads to two problems. So one is monopoly. So meaning it's like they have everything. They have device, they have data, they have manufacturer, they have user, they have everything, which makes like the innovation stops here, right? So if you look at the IoT, you compare IoT as of now to IoT probably like 5, 10 years ago, there's no much kind of uh, you know, cutting edge kind of new technology that emerged in the past 10 years. Of course, we're having nicer cars, we're having nicer phones, but that's kind of just like an iteration of what we already have starting from 10 years ago. I think we need like even more disruptive like innovation from here. Definitely like a monopoly is a big enemy to this innovation. So that's one. And the second problem, I think that's also we can see is like the fragmentation of the IoT entire industry, right? So there are so many like small like verticals. For example, like cars, smart home cameras, the smart meters, the satellite draw. Everything is like its own kind of ecosystem, its own like the value chain. But there is no actually easy way to connect everything all together. For example, you can very easily maybe connect your phone with your car as of now, all together. But if you want to add, smart home to this connection, or even maybe smart meter to this connection, or even something else to this connection, then that's kind of become impossible, to connecting maybe 4, 5, 6 things all together. So I feel like so there is a big business opportunity here if we have a way, to connect everything all together. So that's
Yeah.
why we started the IoTeX, right? So we are thinking about, how about we work together with every developer on this world who's interested in bringing this like open, fair kind of decentralized backbone to connect all the devices in the world. That'd be like something very fun and also very valuable in the long term.
100% agree. We've spoken to people such as Rob Tiffany in the past on the show where we talk about a common interface, right, and almost lending itself from the open source community that you've got these devices, but nothing is necessarily uniformly connected at the moment, and that's the issue. So you've got your smart fridge and your white goods and your phone and your car and the infotainment system, but none of it is synced in one, and that's really the next step. And to allowing that to happen. So that's really interesting that you're doing that within IoTeX. It's a fantastic premise and clearly doing well. For those that don't necessarily know blockchain or have come from a very machine-to-machine background, in simple terms, can you explain what blockchain is for people that perhaps have heard this term but not really understood what it means?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to, right? So basically, from computer science point of view, it's a very simple data structure. I can give you like an analogy for this. Think about you probably have like a 3, 4 paper boxes, right? So you just use a rope to just chain them together. So that's why it's called blockchains, right? It's a chain of blocks, basically a chain of boxes. And in each box, you probably like put in some of the records. For example, like a one record being your birth certificate, another one would be like your tax, some record. They just put everything into the block, right? And just seal the block and you just tie together to the chain. And every time you have new records, you just adding like a new paper box here and putting them into the paper box, seal it, and tie it back to the chain using a rope. That's how like the blockchain actually grows. It grows block by block, and each block has like tons of record, right? So this record is actually called transaction. For example, if Tom, I send you like $5 on blockchain, that's just one record we put into the paper box. Yeah. So that's a very simple analogy for blockchain, But blockchain is such a great innovation because it enabled two things that was like unprecedented in human history before, right? So one is consensus. Basically, it means you can build trust at scale. So like I can build like the app probably, engaging with 100 people from everywhere from the world, which I don't know, I don't trust, but we can have a way to work together. So this is like kind of uh, consensus. And another one is incentives. Basically, it has a very nice setup of the roles in the network, like everyone can contribute in a way and get some sort of reward, but collectively, everybody's like effort just making this entire network, secure and decentralized and work. I think that's kind of like a beauty of blockchain.
Great succinct explanation there for people, and I completely agree. I think the the possibilities are almost limitless with blockchain. It's easy once you talk about it, and then you wonder why we weren't here already, and why we didn't look to try and instigate this in the past. But I guess there's a race between visionary and what's the ability that we have within computer systems at the moment, and one is leading the front, and so on and so forth. Going a bit deeper into that, Raullen, how is blockchain used in IoT specifically, and what is it that you're trying to do as a business to take that decentralized approach, that daisy chain approach, into an IoT ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking, actually. I want to drill down on 2 points around this one, right? So one is around privacy, and the one is around openness and innovation. So the first one, like the blockchain can do for IoT, is actually taking back control from big tech. Like I have worked at those big companies. I know like the inner workings for these companies, right? So they give us like an incredible technology over past decades, almost for free and almost for everyone. It's like a free lunch, but but it's actually not. So our devices and data actually have been owned and used by these big guys, for their purposes, right? Making money for them, and even sometimes against ourselves. So I can give you some examples here, like the ADT. So they're spying on people in their homes. So ADT is like the biggest security systems, like home security systems in United States. So lots of families they install these cameras, some like doorbells, for like the from the ADT company. But unfortunately, they spy on people in their homes. How creepy that could be, right? Another example is like I'm sure everybody knows Facebook just use people's data to determine their political preference and influence people. So that's really sad to say. So what like a blockchain can do for IoT, from this point is definitely like we want to give the control of device data back to its owner, right? So the people, so to give a very simple example is you own your private key, you own your Bitcoin, right? No one can just grab those Bitcoin from you without access to your private key. So we apply the same, technology, same principles to IoT as well. You own your private key, you own this device, and all the data actually produced by this device. No one can take it away from you. So that's basically around the privacy and control.
Yeah.
And another one, long term, and even more interesting around the openness, which leads to innovation, right? So why this openness is so important? Because for now, of course, these big companies they dominate everything. Then for a developer, including myself, and I'm sure I like you guys, it's not easy to just turn your great idea into a production and just add scale, right? It's almost impossible. Once you have a great idea, like the big guys will always take a leap even before you and just make it happen. So with openness, so there will be like a nicer way to reallocate the resources. Like all the talents, they should be working on the thing, like they are interesting, they are good at, and there will be perfect competition. For example, like a very simple idea about like a doorbell, probably like a 10, 20, even 100 open source projects will emerge, right? If we open up the infrastructure, and the best one will win. So that's called perfect competition that leads to the perfect product. And the third is trustworthiness, right? Of course, everything's open and transparent. So you can look into this one. Oh, I trust like the doorbell you built, right? So this all these things all together basically will lead to innovation at scale. I think that's kind of like a probably like the most important thing, like the biggest opportunity here for IoTeX and also for this IoT and blockchain intersection in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, fantastic and superbly put, right? It's, I mean, for me, having that openness from a transparency, security, and innovation point of view, that's critical, isn't it? If we are to develop in the way that we need to develop, we have to give the power back to the people. And I think in a way that's probably why large institutions are somewhat worried about the decentralized concept, what that looks like, and losing a bit of control, I suppose.
Yeah.
But ultimately, this is a train that's not stopping. We're on this path, and it's going to be wonderful to see the innovations that can come from this in the future. And what IoTeX is doing is incredible, you know, and what you've
Yeah.
started is fantastic. Could you talk a little bit about some of the industries that you're serving? So I know that you're involved in healthcare, you're involved in some other domains at the moment. Is there any sort of use cases you can talk about and things that you're actually doing right now?
Yeah, sure. So there are like a few verticals like we are looking into. We are working with basically like an ecosystem, like a teams, startups, who's interested in those ideas, right? So basically like one vertical we're looking into is healthcare. So we do have a, startup, which is called Health Blocks in Europe, actually working with us on this one. So their idea is pretty simple, right? But, which is efficient actually. So they collect all the devices from like your wearables, for example, your watch, or maybe something like a what's it called, like a smart sleeping mat, right? So basically, you put underneath
Okay.
your bed when you sleep, it monitors how well you sleep, right? So they
Okay.
collect all this data using our infrastructure and technology, and just let user to own that portion of the data. Then later, like a user can actually open up this data to physicians, to other healthcare providers, and even for research institutions, of course, with some certain of like a sort of incentives, right? So people just getting paid for the data, or like people just getting some sort of benefits from the physicians by providing this port of data. So this is like a super interesting one. And another one, so we sort of like looking into is smart home, this vertical as well. So there is another company, it's like a camera company that works with us pretty closely. So we ship a product called like a UCAN altogether last year. So I think for now it's more than 6,000 UCAN has been deployed to United States families here, right? So the idea is still like a very simple. You own your private key, you own all the camera data that's actually produced by UCAN, and no one can steal that from you, right? So even like so server gets hacked, you're like UCAN gets stolen, then still every data still belongs to you. Like no one can tamper your data, no one can get your data. So that's kind of like around the consumer facing use cases. And there are
Yeah.
also some like enterprise facing use cases. We're doing is actually we work with a company called Consensus Networks. So they get like a big US Navy grant based on our
Okay.
technology. They build some like the medical supply chain solution. It's called HealthNet. It's also like in production. Basically they are protecting like the vaccines, like the COVID-19 vaccines, using the technology we have. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah. I think that's critical, isn't it? Because I think that one of the issues about adoption of devices for health monitoring, and I'm wearing a wearable ring at the moment, and have a smartwatch, and because I'm a kind of very much into this industry, but a lot of people haven't because of that security element, because people are worried about that, and I think the work that you're doing in companies in this space to connect devices and the term Internet of Trusted Things is important for the average person on the street, so that they're not worried that their data isn't secure, is going to get into the wrong hands. And I think that's one of the main things that your business is doing, and hopefully people can be more aware of. And that's one of the outcomes that we hope from this podcast, is that people will see it and think, well, that's a really important step to take. And one of the main advantages of implementing blockchain, into the IoT ecosystem from your standpoint and what you're doing. I mean, it's fantastic. Just on that note, so obviously security is widely spoken about, certainly in IoT. You have a vision yourself, right? And you're widely known as a vision for Internet of Trusted Things. Could you talk a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah. So Internet of Trust Things is like kind of the next generation of Internet of Things, right? So think about this Boston Dynamics. They have a robot dog, right? So which looks very cool. But do you dare to own one at your home? Probably not, right? It could be a killing machine if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So that's why we say like this as trustworthiness is actually like the key element for the adoption of Internet of Things. And even for now, like a home camera, that's a very simple example, right? So more people are trying to deploy home camera at the home, but after looking at those like a video data leak, this camera gets hacked, I think lots of people like stop for doing that. That's kind of like a block for adoption. Yeah, so for us, right, in an ideal world, we want user to own their device and data, and the utility like the machine, the device it produces, never have to worry about like a data leak or device hacking anymore. And the user has like the say to say I want to donate or maybe sell my device data or utility to developers, to research institutions we trust and we like, give them this raw material to build, to innovate, right, to program upon. So basically, we want have like kind of virtual layer to make every IoT device to be programmable, right? So that's where innovation could just start. So
Yeah.
if this idea, like new ideas, innovations, this exciting, like users, they should share like a certain portion of the profit, the benefits, right? And of course, make the world a better place. Yeah, to put this into like concrete example, like for example, you have autonomous vehicles, right? Um, you could allow, if you own your vehicle and data, you could allow the best developers to build like the best like a Uber style apps, allowing this car to autonomous pick up people while you're asleep, which generates like a passive income, right? Based on your vehicle, based on the data it produces. Yeah, so that will make like the world a nicer place. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And
and all.
yeah, I know. I was just going to say, and I think that that's really, really important. To demystify this for people, and the general consensus around IoT is it's not this big scary concept of everything being connected and
Yeah,
everyone watching you. There is a feeling of this is going to make your life better. This is going to be better for you. And enrich people's lives, and it's something that we talk about a lot here. I'm curious, what are the vulnerabilities though with blockchain? I mean, we hear a lot about the good side. Where could we come unstuck on this, Raullen?
yeah, I think that's a great question, right? So I would think the biggest vulnerability for blockchain is not about the technology, it's about like a misconception, right? So if you think, or maybe people think blockchain is a silver bullet for everything, that's definitely like not true. So it's a very nice and powerful tool, that can be properly used and integrated with other technologies such as IoT and AI to make it very useful. But of course, blockchain is not, kind of like a zero bullet for everything. So it will be very risky to thinking that way. On the other hand, there are like so many blockchain projects out there doing like a weird stuff here and there. But I think IoTeX is probably the any like any serious project who's working on this, connecting the physical world with the blockchain world using IoT technologies, right? So for example, like so far we have building this blockchain down from scratching, um, which is actually running in production since 2019 and running by 100 more delegates globally, processing like a 30 million transactions, right? So on top of the blockchain, we have over 50 like creative, decentralized applications around DeFi, NFT, information marketplace, some financial derivatives based on the real world data, real world information. And of course, we deployed 6,000 UCAN. By the way, UCAN actually won the CES Innovation Award in 2019.
Oh,
So those
fantastic!
devices, yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And those devices are actually, living an IoTeX network right now, protecting those 6,000 families for their privacy. But we're just getting started. We're just getting started. So we're like working on onboarding even new devices, like which are very open source devices, like a Raspberry Pi, Arduino, and we have also like we are making also one kind of open source hardware. It's called Pebble. It's like a GPS plus, it's a GPS tracker plus other 16 different sensors like a humidity, temperature, some vibration or whatsoever. So those data actually can be, collected by the people in a trustworthy way and, pumping back to the blockchain for use cases like, uh, like a weather monitor, supply chain management. Um, uh, yeah, so basically proof of presence, proof of interaction, right? So for example, Tom, so if I made you a visit, right, on a certain day, I could carry my paper tracker and I will push a button. Maybe you push a button altogether. Then these two data points actually will go to the blockchain to generate some sort of proof. Oh, Tom and Rollin was in the same location at a specific time, right? right? Something like interesting, like some very innovative apps will be emerge around this angle as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it almost seems like it's hand in hand, right? The way that you talk about it so passionately, winning a CES award in 2019 is a real accolade and recognition of the fantastic work that you're doing. Do you see a future whereby blockchain and IoT implementations go hand in hand, and that the merger of these together, it's just the way it's done? Is that where you think the future is going with this?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think the future world will be, full of freedom and fairness, right? Thanks to the advance of the technology. Um, Basically, I'm sure, like we can see, the infra will be open to all devices and users, where they can interact with each other like frictionlessly and trustworthily, right? Um, so for example, your car can notify your smart home to get ready, while you're driving back. Washing machines can order laundry detergent itself when needed, which will be delivered by maybe a small drone or something like maybe a robotic dog, who knows? And your wearable device can monitor your body 24/7 while the AI doctor takes care of you, right? Like predictively, and probably all those scenarios will be happening on Mars. Yeah, let's count on Elon Musk, right? So who knows?
Yeah,
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 that's
yeah. No, I know. I think it's fantastic. And clearly, I mean, how old is your business? How many years has it been going?
yeah. We started like in 2017. Now it's 2021, so it's almost 4 years. It will have its fourth birthday probably in about 3 months from now.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
And you've grown rapidly, haven't you? So how many people are you now in IoTeX?
Yeah, so we grew like a really fast. So we have like we're kind of distributed, right? Decentralized team. So we have
Yes.
roughly 20 people here.
Naturally, of course you would be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the spirit of blockchain. So we have like roughly 20 people here in the United States. We have like a 20-ish people in Asian, like in Singapore, India, and China, and we also have 3 employees in Europe at the current
Okay,
moment. Yeah. So, but still,
fantastic.
like we're engaging with developers and open source contributors, even in the IoT space. Yeah, definitely like we are so welcome to have everybody on board and all work together. Like we are not a
Yeah,
company, right? So we are like a kind of open source foundation,
yeah.
just like a emission for this purpose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I've got many friends that are contributors, to the Linux kernel, and that's my background, and and I appreciate that and understand what you're doing, and I think it's great. We need more companies like yourselves, right? We need more people, visionary people, that know that in order to achieve where we want to go with this, it needs to be open as much as possible. It needs to be collaborative. We need to drive innovation, and we need to have a common understanding of how things link. And clearly that's going to be somewhat challenging sometimes when you have major players that are trying to set a standard, and perhaps don't like to play with each other as well as perhaps they should. But I think ultimately, if we look at the goal and where this is going, and the realization of why we're doing this in the first place, that should hopefully rule over everything else. But time will tell with that. Raullen, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on the show. Honestly, it's been fantastic. Such an interesting insight into blockchain, the work that you're doing. Really incredible. Where can our listeners find out more about your business? Assume you're online, socials. Can you share where people can find out more?
Yeah, of course. Like the first off will be our website, IoTeX.io. So that's where you should get started. Of course, we have our Twitter, LinkedIn, Discord channel for developers. We have our GitHub. Of course, Google is your friend in that scenario, right? So just search for IoTeX GitHub, you will get us. And also, like my personal email is Raullen@IoTeX.io. So if you have any, cool ideas, some great thoughts, definitely like I want to chat with you, chat with our audience here. Especially you have some idea around how we can make this innovation happen on this open infrastructure.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, you can tell you're an open source guy at heart. You've just given your personal email out to the business, in front of everyone. That's a lovely thing. Now, I can't promise you won't get sent a lot of emails now, but hey, that's a good thing, right? So,
Yeah.
thank you once again. Been great having you on. Good luck with everything.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Thank you so much for having me.
And if you'd like to find out more about the IoT podcast show, as always, go to our website, join the discussion in the comments, get involved, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.